All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Dave and Nick here. We don't preview and predictions for the Military Bowl. Underrated matchup between Duke and UCF. 1-point line in favor of the Blue Devils. 62.5 is the over-under. Wednesday, December 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN live from Navy Stadium, Indianapolis, Maryland. First meeting ever between these two schools. Looking at the UCF offense. Nick, this offense has certainly struggled at times, and maybe I'm being a little too hard on them because they still have average 6.2 yards per play, almost 500 yards per contest, and 35 points per game. But at times, they just seem to struggle, and they don't really seem to be as efficient or as effective as they should be. Top to bottom, it's still a good unit. Ryan O'Keefe, he's in the portal. He's gone to Boston College. R.J. Harvey's really stepped up this year. Been a great complimentary back to Isaiah Bowser. Johnny Richardson was supposed to fill that role, and he's had a respectable year. But Harvey's the one that's taken the reins of this offense in the backfield. 767 for him, almost 7 yards per touch, 5 touchdowns. Bowser, 760, and a whopping 14 touchdowns. And, of course, John Rice Plumlee, speed for days, leads the team with 841 yards and 11 scores on the ground. He's been pretty efficient as a passer, 2,400 yards, 63% completion rate, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. Not the greatest of ratios in the world. This is certainly an offense that possesses some good balance. Of course, O'Keefe, again, he's in Boston College now. 54 grabs, 747 yards, and 5 touchdowns, though, for Javon Baker. A guy they added from Alabama, him and Kobe Ware-Hudson. Those guys are going to be the two go-tos. 2 SEC transfers from the state of Alabama have been terrific here for Gus Malzahn, 578 and 7 touchdowns. Bit of a slow start to the year for Kobe Hudson. Did end the year, though, with 17 yards per catch, and he's looking to add on to that total. And I think this is a very experienced offensive line, too. It's going to lead the charge for UCF. Nick, what's your thoughts on this offense top to bottom? Some of the concerns I voiced just a minute ago are certainly present, but altogether, this is a really good offense.
I think this offense is great. There certainly are some concerning spots, but I love this offense top to bottom. John Rice Plumlee has been my favorite player in college football that was not an Alabama player for the past few seasons. I think he's so dynamic in what he can do on the field, through the air, and on the ground. I absolutely love the fit for him when he transferred here, and I'm glad he's staying for another year because I think he's going to continue to grow as a quarterback, and he has more untapped potential to use. 2,400 yards passing, 63% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns on the season, plus the 800 yards on the ground and 11 scores. He is a great runner. The versatility there is fantastic. Gus Malzahn has really been working to get the most out of him, and I'm really pleased with how it's working. I also noticed that UCF has used 2 quarterbacks at time. Mikey Keene has come into certain situations. He has 600 yards passing on 83 attempts, 72% completion percent, 6 scores for him. So they can use 2 quarterbacks in certain situations. They have some variety in some of these games, which is certainly not a bad thing to have. Like R.J. Harvey and Isaiah Bauer, I think these are 2 solid backs. They split the carries a little evenly, and they got good numbers. Each of them have over 760 yards, 14 touchdowns for Bowser. 14 touchdowns for Bowser. I like the numbers out of that. Javon Baker, transfers from Alabama. The fit seems to make a whole lot of sense for me. It's continuing to work with the 747 yards receiving, plus the 5 scores for him. Of course, they lose O'Keefe's 5 touchdowns and 700 yards receiving for him. They still got Kobe Hudson, who had a bit of a down year, but still not bad numbers for him. 17 yards per catch, plus the 7 touchdowns for him. Alec Holler, the tight end, as well. Not a terrible season with 12.9 yards per catch and a score for him. This is a good offense. They can score a lot of points. They have a ton of balance. They hit you in a whole lot of ways. 34.4 points per game, 480 total yards of offense per game. I like this offense a lot, and I think they're excited to see what they can do against Duke.
Mikey Keene is actually in the transfer portal, but that's still kind of a valid point because Thomas Castellanos, he played a good bit in that loss to Tulane. He got involved for around 20 snaps. So they do, it looks like at times, like to operate with 2 quarterbacks, which I don't really understand. I think Plumlee's been a little beat up, though, so that might explain that. Looking at the Duke offense, Mike Elko probably should be coach of the year. This team was giving up 40 points per game last year. They got that down to 22 this year. And then on offense, they were scoring 22 points per game a season ago, up to 33. Just phenomenal, great work, really. From Mike Elko and his staff. 33 points per game, though, again, 421 yards for this offense. Riley Leonard, this is a guy that we talked about in the preseason, a talented dual-threat guy. But it was hard to assume how he would do, because the offensive line is all that great. Supporting cast had some talent, but still an iffy program altogether on the side of the ball. But I think he's been great. 636 rushing, 11 touchdowns, only 6 picks, 20 touchdowns, 2,800 yards passing. Riley Leonard has been the real deal here for Duke. I think he's going to be one of the higher risers in college football next year. Jordan Waters, 561 rushing, 8 touchdowns. He's been around a while. Jaquez Moore, versatile playmaker, 465 and 4 touchdowns. And Jalen Coleman, he also has 400 yards rushing as well. His backfield's battled some health at times. Coleman coming back, though, he's had double-figure touches in almost every single game this year. It's a guy they certainly want to feed, and I think it's going to be, a big game plan coming into this one. Looking at that guy in Jordan Moore, though, who was just terrific. He does a lot for them. 57 receptions, 643, and 5 touchdowns. He's really focused on being a pass catcher, the former quarterback. Jalen Calhoun, a guy that I really expected to be in the transfer portal last year, Nick. This is a guy who's a veteran, has got a lot of production. He stays put, and it's really paying off this year. 56 grabs, 811 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he's on an 8-win football team. I think this is an offense that's made plenty of big strides. This is a really good offensive line. Graham Barton at tackle, he's just been elite for them. This is a fun unit, Nick. We just talked about UCF being great. No one really knows anything about Duke, but I love what they got at running back. They're pretty deep. I love Jalen Calhoun at wide receiver, and I think they're pretty, respectably deep at that position as well. And then the quarterback and Leonard, phenomenal playmaker. Him and Plumlee. This is going to be a great duel.
This is another offense where the quarterback is the leading rusher. Another underrated offense in college football. Riley Leonard has blown away my expectations so far this season. Very impressive. Him, the 2,700 yards passing, 20 scores, plus the 11 scores on the ground, 636 yards on the ground as well. Fantastic numbers from Leonard. Fantastic year for him. Waters, Jacquez Moore, these two guys at running back, solid numbers. I like Waters a lot. I think he's a good back. Great carries for him. 8 touchdowns in the season. Calhoun, fantastic wide receiver. Glad he stayed put. The 56 catches for the 811 yards, plus the 14.5 yards per catch, and the 4 scores for him. Jordan Moore, Samir Haggins, Eli Pinnacle. These guys are fantastic so far this season. A lot of great averages per catch. Moore 11.3, Haggins 13.6, Pinnacle 16 flat. I like Haggins as well with the 5 scores on the season. Moore also has 5 scores. This is a good offense. They really have turned this offense to a high-flying power offense with a great balance of running and throwing the ball. I think this offense puts up a lot of points. They're exciting to watch. 420 yards per game on offense, and I think they've really come around here. This is an offense that was terrible last season, and Mike Elko has done a fantastic job transforming them.
Look at the UCF defense to go against. This is just a strange unit. I think I broke it down 3 or 4 times this year, and I just really don't know what to say about them. You look at 600-plus yards and 10 yards per play allowed in the rematch against Tulane. The defense played pretty soundly in the first meeting. Granted, Michael Pratt did miss a handful of throws. Really could have changed that game. Morris Brash, though, up front, 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. The Knights, as a team, only have 22, so their pass rush is not evident at times. Jason Johnson replaced Tatum Bethune, who went to Florida State, and he's had a great year, 119 tackles from his linebacking position. Matthew Alexander up front, one of the best run defenders in the conference. He's certainly been an impact performer. This is a strange unit, Nick, because they don't have many ball hawks. 6 interceptions on the year. 3 of those are by the senior Devod Wilson, who I think is phenomenal. He's got those picks, 41 tackles as well. This defense doesn't really force a lot of turnovers. They don't come with a lot of sacks. Their numbers on the year are pretty outstanding. 382 yards per game, 156 rushing yards per game. That could certainly be worse. 226 through the air. It's a pretty remarkable number. It's just a strange unit. They seem to have just a handful of strong individual players, and they certainly seem to step up at times in the biggest moments, because this is certainly a team knocking on the door of a double-figure win season, and they beat some of the best opponents in conference, other than ECU, of course, where they had a lot of turnovers. Certainly didn't help the defense out. They have a sort of taste in their mouth, though, coming off a beatdown against Tulane. I think they're going to look to do a lot better, of course, than what they did last time out. That's going to be hard here against the Duke offense. It's just as versatile, if not even better. What are your expectations for this game? I really it's just hard to really get a read on this defense all year long. I've really been puzzled by this unit.
This is a defense where the numbers don't actually match what the defense is doing. You look at the numbers, and you'd be pretty impressed considering how they've done this. You'd be like 23.2 yards allowed per game, 157.3 yards allowed on the ground, plus a 226 through the air. You think that's pretty good numbers. Only forcing 6 interceptions, and 3 of them coming from one player, Wilson, who is having a fantastic season. No disrespect to him, but he is really their entire secondary in terms of turnovers. Devontae Brown also has 2 interceptions with 30 tackles. You expect more. The pass rush is non-existent. Morris Brash with the 6 sacks, really leading the way. Josh Seliskar as well. He's got 3 on the year on the defensive line. But outside of that, these numbers are just 1, 1.5. Jason Johnson has 1.5 sacks. He has 122 total tackles. He's been by and far the best player on the field for this defense. The tackle numbers are fantastic for him, but it drops off quickly. Morris Brash is the second highest tackler, 53 total tackles. So when I look at those stats and look at these tackle numbers, I think these are 2 totally different defenses. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's kind of like, which defense are you going to get when UCF goes in the field? It's hit or miss for me. It's weird. They act up. They don't really seem to have a consistent defensive scheme going that's working for the Knights.
Then look at a Duke defense. Again, like I said a few minutes ago, 40 points per game allowed last year, down to 22. That's an outstanding recovery. They certainly had their issues, though. Gave up 400-plus yards to Georgia Tech early in the year against Kansas. Gave up, a season-high 528. It's actually second behind North Carolina. 3-point loss there where they gave up 530-plus yards. They're certainly on the field a lot. Numerous times this year they've been on the field for 70-plus plays. I think they were pretty good against Pittsburgh in a loss. I think this defense is a little bit easier to get a read on compared to UCF's, but it's certainly without their issues as well. Something weird about this team, though, Nick, is they're great at forcing fumbles. That's something we talked about was the lone bright spot coming into the year for Duke. 15 forced fumbles last year. They got 14 of them this year. Dwayne Carter, he's just an elite defensive tackle. Pretty sure he's playing in this game. I haven't heard anything otherwise. 11 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. He has 3 of those aforementioned fumbles. Got Jamon Franklin as well in the interior, 311 pounds. Shaka Howard, one of my favorite players in the conference coming into the season, having another strong campaign, 94 tackles for him. This is a defense, Nick, resurgent unit. They've been forcing turnovers. I definitely think that some of the strong individual players they have stuck around have certainly benefited this football team. 30 sacks on the year. Darius Joyner at safety, 91 tackles, 7 tackles behind the line, 6 plays on the ball. I think this Duke defense is really good. Mike Elko, I think, to do this in year 1. Can't imagine what he's going to do, 2 or 3 years from now. Great start. Detrani Young coming over, similar style of scheme at Iowa State, so he was certainly a big impact transfer for him. Secondary, though, I think they've certainly played very good football this year compared to last season, of course. 262 passing yards per game. It's certainly something that UCF's going to look to expose. But I think they match up quite well here on the defensive line in their ability to stop the run. How can they defend them vertically, though? That remains to be seen. Very interested for that matchup, though. But over the last month and a half, they've been exceptional against the run, and that's where UCF's going to look to make their money. So how do you see this one going for the Blue Devils?
I like this defense a lot. The turnovers are fantastic. 9 interceptions plus the 15 fumble recoveries on the season. Fantastic numbers for me. Shaka Howard, leading the way with the 93 total tackles plus the 2 picks for him. He has 6 pass breakups as well. Fantastic numbers out of him. Brandon Johnson, defensive back, 5.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. Fantastic numbers for him. Dwayne Carter, we assume he's going to play. 5.5 sacks for him, 35 total tackles. I like this defense. They've really, compared to what they were last year, it's night and day with a 22.8 points allowed per game. The rush defense is fantastic as well. 120 yards allowed is a great number. I love the way this defense is able to plug the run, force teams to throw the ball. They really got to focus on that. I think that's a big key is contain Plumlee on the ground, force him to throw the ball, force him to get a little uncomfortable and make plays that he doesn't want to make. I think if you can contain Plumlee, I think this Duke defense can have a great day considering the tacklers they have on the field. I like this defense a lot and it continues to get better.
You must have read my last slide because the biggest key for Duke is containing John Ross Plumlee. That's certainly going to be a big thing for their interior pass rush. It's kind of in the same category. That's really the biggest key for them. I think their offense is going to do just fine. For UCF, don't get burned vertically, whether that's against the pass or against the run. Getting off balance when teams can attack you vertically just sets things up for your defense to get thrashed, and that's what Tulane was able to do. Really, is just win vertically. They have speed in the backfield. Pass catchers are big play guys as well, and their quarterback was able to put it on them. Steal some possessions as well for UCF because, just how the defense played in the last game, 10 yards per play allowed. That's just absurd. I've never seen numbers like that. Duke 38-31, UCF for me. No one's probably going to pick Duke in this game because I don't know anything about them because they've been a very quiet football team this year. But I think they've quietly been a really good football team. Wiley Leonard in this deep backfield, nice group of pass catchers. I think they're going to be excited to play this game because no one in the preseason, including us, thought they would even be here at all. And UCF, I think, is certainly a team that's going to be building for the future, especially with Plumlee coming back. But I think they're going to start next year with L1 as they enter the new year.
I think it's completely possible that Duke wins this game. I'm going to take UCF to win this game. I think they're going to burn a lot of clock. They're going to have a ton of possessions on offense. They're going to get a few turnovers here. I think that's what they have to see. I think Duke will struggle to contain John Rice Plumlee, highlighted as the key for Duke. I think they're going to struggle to do that, and that's why I'm going to take UCF here. I think UCF has a lot of excitement going into this game. I think they're excited for the way this team is kind of returning a lot of stars and progressing for the future. I like the talent on both teams' offense. I think they have a ton of offensive talent. I think the defenses, leave a little bit to desire, but I think both of them could have a good day potentially. I like UCF in this one. I think John Rice Plumlee and co. will lead to a victory, but I'm excited for this game. Very underrated bowl matchup at the Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium in Annapolis. This is a fun one in the Military Bowl. Underrated matchup, not a lot of folks talking about it. I think this could be a really good one to watch.
I agree. I think this will be a really close game for 4 quarters. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.